Yeah, can you hear me? Not clear? Good morning. Okay, we have to speak up a little bit. Right, we will discuss about vessels performance. And we already have seen the first two presentations which went into the technology and showed very nice what is today possible with technology on board of vessels. In this panel, we want to elaborate why we have to do these kind of things, why we have to use technology, how do we have to become, at the end of the day, compliant, but the underlying question is always why. And to set the mind, I would like all of us to give us a very brief introduction. So if you don't mind, will you to start about yourself?
Thank you, Captain. Ladies and gentlemen, Kalimera, my name is Fulvio Solari. I'm head of sales of Arribatec Marine. Arribatec Marine is a company that is in the market of providing software solution for the shipping industry for almost 40 years. And I'm in the sector for about 20 years. I've seen a lot in terms of digitalization in the shipping industry. It's a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Mahos.
Thank you, Captain Adami. And I also thank CSN and Mr. Adami Biologist for inviting me today to this forum. I am with Levante Ferries as a HSQE director. Levante Ferries is a young but rapidly developing company. We own 5 RoPax, medium-sized RoPax vessels operating in the Ionian Sea, serving the islands of Zakynthos, Cephalonia, Ithaca, and Patra. We recently acquired a 6 RoPax vessel from China, and we brought it to COSCO shipyard in China for reconstruction. All our vessels have received awards for interior design and quality of services. I'm the SQE director, as I said. I'm in charge for the safety management system of the company and the PMS. I'm also in charge of all flag and class surveys, dry dockings, lubricants and fuels, greenhouse gas emissions reporting and monitoring and reporting, business plans and feasibility studies. Also participate in several EU-funded research projects. The latest one is SIPS, aims to develop the guidelines for the use of hydrogen in passenger shipping. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Popravko.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Sergey Popravko. I am head of ESG department, just newly appointed head of ESG department at MSM. I'm also teaching maritime subject at the Frederick University here. I've been in this industry since 1978, long enough to be through all these changes, and now I took this challenge and jointly with Captain Adami, we're going to introduce ESG in MSM, and yeah, we are a dry cargo ships operator, perhaps not as large as BSM, but I think it's ESG on top of our agenda, and yeah, we're going to discuss it today on how we can contribute and what we can do on spot to make sure that this green agenda applied even for smaller shipping companies as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Popravko.
Hello, again, I'm Theodore Ioannou. I'm working for Bernhard Schulte Shipmanagement. I'm a group technical superintendent there, and I'm responsible for BSM's maintenance strategy. We are a ship managing company. We manage around 650 vessels of various types. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Demetris. I am a marine biologist. I come from a slightly different sector. I direct a marine environmental research lab based in Cyprus since 2008. We're doing research and providing environmental consulting services to big companies for development projects and environmental permitting. And I specialize on the environmental impacts, on the anthropogenic impacts on the marine environment. And I also teach, I'm a visiting lecturer to Frederick University, and I teach about marine ecosystems and about also shipping environmental impacts and how can ships comply with the regulations and all this good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Demetris. Okay, I would like to set the scene now with a very short presentation. And we want to thank Andonis and Cyprus Shipping News for giving us this forum to address the why we have to do vessels performance. So we all know it's about the climate change, and it is about an angry planet, and our children have made an impact. They have made us as parents to understand that we cannot continue, we have to do something. So what are the issues? What are the problems? Let me go back a little bit in history. So we had NOx and SOx. That was an issue from the 60s, when in Northern Europe the forests were dying. We had brown pine trees all over. And the topic at that time was acid rain. And it needed to be addressed. IMO went onto it, and of course the European Union went onto it as well, and lots of regulation was put on land-based industries. However, at that time, the source of the sulfur oxide and the NOx was identified being in the fuel. So it was an easy way to say, remove these two substances from the fuel, and you have immediately results. So MARPOL in 1997 was introduced with Annex 6, and the NOx and SOx problem is today on its way to be solved. In shipping, we are doing the last milestone now by having engines ready with Tier 3 compliancy in the next deliveries. So that's the last thing. So I consider NOx and SOx actually almost done. Sorry, you cannot see it. There is a word done at the bottom. Now, the new baby in town is CO2, and that is global warming. And this is what we have to address today. The IMO started, as we heard from the Shipping Deputy Ministry and also in the presentation from TEBAC, to introduce measures from 2018. They benchmark us also against 2018. And it is good to hear that based on that baselines, the emissions maybe are reduced. The bad note is that that is a comparison against the baseline and is not absolute. So the absolute CO2 emissions are on a year-to-year base increasing. So we have not yet globally addressed a reduction of CO2 emissions to our planet. So our planet is still, with all the actions what we have done, it is still on fire, and it's an ongoing topic, and that's why we are sitting here today. If we don't take action in the next 10 years, the global warming will continue. And today already it has been established, and it is not any longer contested in the research and academia world, that global warming is at 1.5% already today. 1.45 degrees higher temperature than in the last decade. That's established. If we continue and go to 2%, then the yellow dots will be triggered. And if we go even beyond that, 2 to 4%, the orange dots will be triggered, and 4% the red dots. These are tipping points. And a tipping point will be explained what it means in this very short video which is coming now.
So I made this climate model, an extremely basic climate model. Normally we think of climate change kind of like this. Add a bit of CO2, get a bit of heat. And that's true until a certain point, when a slight nudge can lead to drastic changes. This is the idea of a tipping point. Some of Earth's systems are teetering on the edge of major changes because of a heating planet. And if we nudge them past a certain point, they could change dramatically, regardless of what we do afterwards. One of Earth's critical systems is this, permafrost. It's Arctic soil that's frozen year-round, keeping its carbon locked away. Today, the world's permafrost stores nearly twice as much carbon than the atmosphere. As we warm the climate, we're thawing permafrost, and that ancient stored carbon gets released back into the atmosphere. So you have this cycle. Permafrost thaws, carbon gets released, planet gets hotter, and more permafrost thaws. So if we push permafrost to its tipping point, that cycle would become unstoppable. Earth has many climate systems at risk of these domino effects, on land, in the ocean, and in the ice. The boreal forests in the far north store more than a third of the world's terrestrial carbon. But if they're pushed enough through worsening fires and rising temperatures, they could transform into grasslands and can release a lot of that carbon back into the air. On the poles, melting ice sheets are making the Earth's surface darker. That darker surface absorbs more of the sun's rays, which warms the ice up faster. This cycle could make the meltdown unstoppable. In the Atlantic, a massive underwater current pumps warm water around the Western Hemisphere and carries the energy equivalent of 1 million nuclear power plants. This current is powered by changes in the ocean's temperature and saltiness. A warming and melting Arctic could cause that current to slow down, or maybe even someday stop. So how close are we to some of these tipping points? Well, we've already warmed the planet by 1.2 degrees Celsius. But if we can keep warming below 2 degrees, we can avoid most of these tipping points. If we warm the climate beyond that, we do so at our own risk, and at the increasing risk of some of these systems tipping over. If we were to hit one of these closer tipping points, we could still influence how fast these changes happen. For the collapse of the Greenland ice sheet, a tipping point big enough to lock in 24 feet of sea level rise, we could lose all of Greenland's ice over the next 1,000 years if we kept on increasing fossil fuels. But if we cut emissions, we could hold on to that ice and hold off that sea level rise for more like 10 or 20,000 years. Tipping points change the way we think about climate risk. And the closer we get to the edge, the more dangerous our emissions become. So we made this video as part of a larger project. 3 other writers interviewed leading climate scientists on 7 of the world's tipping elements. If you're curious, you can read all about that in the description.
So, that was a quick introduction to tipping points. I don't want you guys to panic, yeah? We are approaching tipping points, and we have ample time to make sure that they are not being triggered. So that is an issue that we have to somehow consider how we release less CO2. And the immediate answer to this is to use different fuels. Okay? That is what we have to do. They call it today alternative fuels, they call it e-fuels, they call it biofuels, some even call it nuclear. What does it mean for us as of today? When you look at this graph, you see depicted the world population. And we are today at 8.1, almost 8.1 billion people as of today. It is predicted that until 2050, we will add 2 billion people to our planet. So we will reach 10 billion. 2 billion more than today. These 2 billion people, as we can see, will add from Asia and from Africa as a majority. And in Europe, we are on the decline. We all know that the lifestyle in Africa and the lifestyle in Asia is considerably different than the lifestyle we enjoy. In Africa and in Asia, the population uses much, much less energy for their day-to-day life than we do. We talk about equality, we talk about inclusion, so we have to allow nations in Africa and in Asia to improve their lifestyles. And that means these people will trigger energy demands. When we look at what we have achieved today, and I apologize that the graph is a little bit hidden there, but you see that at the bottom line, you see how much solar energy, how much hydro energy, and how much nuclear energy we have today available. That is what we have achieved today. That is hard fact. And we are not talking about electricity alone here. We are talking about energy. That means transportation, shipping is included, aviation is included, and all that energy what we need to run our factories in our industrialized life. So, and then you have on the very, very top, you have the black curve, which gives you the amount of energy provided by the fossil fuels. You see the gap? You see the job which we have to do if we want to phase out fossil fuels. And do you know how much the alternative fuels cost? And what we need to do to scale them up? How much more we have to take as raw materials out of Mother Earth to build the batteries for the electric vehicles, how much copper we need to put in the turbine of the windmills, how much rare earth material we have to take in order to build the photovoltaics. So there is a huge job what we have to do. And we have not accounted for that in Africa and in Asia the population will grow. So to become carbon neutral and not any longer using fossil fuels is a big, big challenge. If we do something here, we have to do it right, so that any action what we take now ultimately will not add to the CO2 footprint. And on that note, I would like to show you this last picture. So we have beautiful technology, we have fantastic things, we have governments opening the floodgates of money to research and development. All that is brilliant. But these things come at a cost. it comes at a cost of the taxpayers, and it comes at a cost of those guys who cannot pay taxes because they have no job, because they're homeless. So if we don't strike a balance between what is affordable to the society and what is needed to combat the global warming, we have an issue. And if we make the fuel for the ocean transportation substantially more expensive than the running of the vessel, we will add to the social problem, because shipping transports 90% of our goods. So everything what we need is coming by ship. If we make that unproportionally more expensive, the shipping companies will have to pass this additional cost on to the end consumer, to the guy who has to buy the ferry ticket, to the person who has to import the t-shirts, to the guy who has to sell his machinery. So politicians and we as a society and the industry representatives here, we have jointly to do a really massive job in the next 10 years to stay below the 2% global, 2 degree global warming, which would trigger the tipping of the Borealis forest. Now, in this panel, we will discuss a little bit what is possible in our reach, what is possible in the IT industry, what is possible on the shipping industry. And we have Dr. Kletou here who can tell us a little bit of what is really necessary and what he observed happening in the ocean around our Limassol Bay. Having said that, we will dive deeply now into the topics, and the floor is open to all of you. So if you have any contribution, if you have anything to say, we have 2 microphones here, and we are good to go. So I would like to start with you, Dr. Mahos. Yes. How do you foresee the implementation of greenhouse gases emission regulations impacting various stakeholders within the maritime industry, and particularly for you in the cruise and passenger industry?
Yes. Captain Adami, as already you explained so beautifully, global warming and its potential consequences are a serious threat to our society. They have forced IMO and EU to implement several regulatory actions like EDI, EXI, CII, EU MRV, EU ETS, Fuel EU Maritime, and others to cut greenhouse gas emissions, and in an attempt to create a more sustainable environment for the current and future generations. The implementation of all these actions will certainly have significant impacts on all stakeholders in the maritime industry. First of all, are the ship owners and operators who will face the increased investment in employing alternative fuels, adopting cleaner technologies, or building new fuel-efficient vessels. Then there are the suppliers of the traditional fuels who will see a decline in their demands as the ship owners shift to cleaner alternative fuels. However, there will be an opportunity for these suppliers to such as of alternative fuels such as LNG, biofuels, hydrogen, to expand their market share. However, they will need to invest heavily in production, storage, and distribution of these alternative fuels. Port authorities will need also to upgrade the facilities to accommodate the vessels running on alternative fuels, and also to provide shore connection to minimize emission reduction while at berth. Another group of important regulators, stakeholders are regulators and governments. Regulators need to enforce the regulation and to ensure compliance across the industry, while the governments will need to provide incentives to support the transition to the new fuels. You said very well, this will affect our passages of our RoPax ferries. In transition to the cleaner and more expensive fuels will inevitably increase the price of the ferry tickets. And also, this will affect also the end users. We said it already. Increases in the shipping cost will increase the final cost of the end consumer's goods. To conclude, the implementation of greenhouse gas emission regulation will certainly have several significant challenges on various stakeholders, but opportunities for innovation, vessel efficiency, and collaboration will lead to a more sustainable maritime industry.
Yeah, so thank you. We had heard from the government today that there are new incentives available in Cyprus. Aris, when you say incentives, how much money do we have to envision these incentives can bring to a ship?
It always depends on it's case-by-case scenario. Depending on the project and what we're dealing with, we will have to sit down and give out and analyze in detail what we're dealing with. So it wouldn't be unfair. It would be unfair to put it in exact numbers.
Yeah.
And deal with it. But it's already happening. I see it happening. We have teams of specialists and our friends from the legal department, and it's already in place.
Okay, so that's great news. I believe this is only for Cyprus flag vessels, no?
So far, yeah.
For Cyprus flag vessels, yeah.
For the fleet. We have to work on the fleet and make sure we extrapolate the results and the findings on what's happening with the Cyprus fleet and get it out there to be a part and contribute to the rest of the similar actions and forums moving in the same direction as we do here today.
Yeah, thank you, Aris. Dr. Kletou, you monitor the oceans and the Cyprus waters for many, many decades. What do you think is the most significant change you have noticed in our waters?
It's not many decades. It's only a couple decades. But yeah, I would say that what my worry is that we are over-expanding our population and our energy demands. Everybody wants to live a luxurious life. Our waste is increasing, more plastic than ever, more carbon emissions than ever. Despite all the talk by politicians and all the regulations in place, I still see that there is a lot of effort need to be done on the ground. And for me, the most important changes I've witnessed in the last 2 decades in the marine environment of Cyprus or Limassol, I would say, is habitat degradation, habitat loss because of too much coastal development and anarchy, environmental impact assessment studies that were not robust enough, and evaluation that was taken lightly, and environmental costs versus the economic revenues. The economic revenues will always be the top choice. But this is changing. Also, invasive species, because of climate change, have caused dramatic changes in our waters. Pollution from runoff, sewage outlets, plastic, overfishing. We're overexploiting all our resources. These are the main, I would say, impacts that we are facing now.
So, do you have a suggestion? Do you have the solution?
I think everybody agrees from the scientific community that we need a multifaceted approach to target these interconnected challenges. And I would say that some of the most important are we need more international collaboration because the sea has no boundaries, and we see a lot of geopolitical games, and many neighboring countries are sometimes on the arms and not on the working together agenda. I would say expand our marine protected areas and enforce protection, because many say that marine protected areas are on paper only. I would say manage fisheries more sustainably, reduce pollution, especially from land sources, but also maritime pollution, mitigate climate change with more energy-friendly practices. I would say take advantage of technology and innovations in technology, in monitoring marine ecosystems, processing data, understanding them, sensors, etc., airspace, and AI. I would say increase our capacity and our education. Awareness is very important. Provide incentives to those that produce and use environmental friendly practices. I would like to see more corporate responsibility, especially from the big pollutants, companies that have polluting activities, to be more environmentally responsible. I would like to see more engagement of the community in decision-making processes. So these are everybody talks about these issues. It's not like I'm coming up with them now. But we know that we need, it's complex problems, and we need to work together on this. Is the only way, and there's a lot of challenges ahead. So yeah, I hope I answered your question in a way.
Yeah, you made it very clear. The oceans belong to all of us or to nobody. The oceans are not regulated like the countries. Yeah, we have in the United Nations, we have the United Nations Convention of the Laws of the Sea, which regulates the free passage from the one country to the other country, but we don't have a legal binding, legal framework which tells us what has to happen in the ocean. And that's why a lot of things are done on paper. This I agree with you. And it is of not really a big help if you do something very, very good on one location of the planet when somewhere else there is even a bigger pollution based on that what you want to achieve with your very, very good thing. So we need a global approach to this. And if we wait for the regulators to regulate the oceans when they even fail to regulate between the countries now, it will be too late. That's why your thought with education and more corporate social responsibility has to come in the foreplay. And we have great people here and great companies on the panel. Theodore, you have a huge ship management company where you look after the technical things. What do you think from your point of view and the corporate responsibility within your company? What are the challenges and the implications associated to the transition to more expensive alternative fuels? And what could be the economic social burden? how you take this into consideration so that within your company you make sure that the seafarers from the developing countries have families which can have a sustainable life as well. So what do you have to tell us?
I feel that the rest of the panelists have already addressed some topics in general, and the answer for that is teamwork here. Everybody needs to stop looking at their own business and look at the bigger picture. We need to see why these regulations are implemented, and it's to have a positive impact on the environment, but it doesn't have to stop there. We need to think about what impact it will have to the end user, to the end consumer, as you said, and how we can make sure that we don't leave anyone behind, because things are going to get more expensive. Less people with less economic power will have to struggle eventually. So to answer your question, I think each company, as we do in BSM, we need to make sure that we look this matter from a more general point of view. We also look at the socio-economical aspects of it and how we can make sure that we reduce the amount of costs that will pass to our clients and will pass to the charters and so on and so forth. So we try to utilize the digital tools in our disposal so that we can make sure that we provide high quality to our clients of information and everything else, but with costs that permit to not pass this burden to the end consumer. But this does not suffice. PSM cannot do that by themselves. So as I said, it's a teamwork. Everyone needs to see what needs to be done and not stop on the regulation and compliance part and say, right now I'm compliant, that's all, and that's it. And as you said, there are locations that they have the regulations for EU, for example, but there might be other places where they consume even more. So eventually, what you do is you hide everything under the carpet. So we need to have a more strategic approach altogether.
Yeah. Thank you for the large insight into a big ship management company operating globally. It's much appreciated. Fulvio, you are a person and a company which meets different ship owners, different ship managers on a daily basis, because you are trying to advocate your Arribatec software solutions. Do you realize when you talk to your customers and potential customers that there is a certain mindset towards more greener, real solutions, more monitoring of the emissions? Do you feel that there is something happening in the boardrooms?
I have to say, in some cases, yes, absolutely yes. In some other case, the topic is more on the compliance. So follow what somebody above decided, and thus they have to comply. It depends very much on a case by case, on the type of the company, on the sensitivity of the single person that are running the company, even if I totally agree with what is the baseline of what we are discussing now, so that's the direction, and we have to collaborate towards that direction as industry and as a human race. For what concern what I can witness, the topic today is very high in priority. The demand is quite high, so there are still companies that are waiting and expecting someone to decide for them, or at least to follow what others are doing. The market is very good now. It's a hive. There are a lot of entities that are dealing with the topic, also with system for monitoring emissions, which I think is good because it makes everything more competitive. So you can find better solution at a better price because everybody are trying to go there. Still, as IT company, I don't see that much collaboration, but that's something that we'll have to improve. I agree on very much on the teamwork. We as a company, we decided not to invent or reinvent something that is already available on the market, but we do what we are good at, and we put ourselves in the condition of receiving and exchanging information with other software, as Theodore before presented as an approach that is in BSM. And furthermore, it depends also very much on the size, on the type of the company. So we need to differentiate between the possibility of small companies, also in terms of having a team to support certain parts compared to big organizations where they can do their own part with their own team.
Yeah, thank you. I understand also that you are about, or you already have launched a new ship management system. And if I understood correctly, the prime idea is also that the new system allows the manager, the ship owner, to plug on easily to other systems so that your data can be shared among other stakeholders. Is that correct, what I said?
Is that correct? To me, what makes the difference today between one IT provider and the other is not the technical capability, but the strategic decision of focusing on specific topic, but enabling the company still to get the most advantage, making your system, your solution, your software capable of receiving and exchanging data with other systems.
I believe this is very, very good news to all of us. A lot of us know the previous market leader, Spectec, in ship management software, the very famous Amos product, where so many of us have worked with. A proprietary system, a system which you once bought, you became a slave of Spectec, and you could not move your data across organizations. Now we hear here that there is a new approach, and you can use this data in the future probably in different ways. I think this is brilliant. This allows, Fulvio, that you can do research and development works across borders with different stakeholders. And I think this is what was very clearly understood also from Theodore, from Dr. Mahos, that this is needed. We need to team up within the industry. And that means we have to work with the data. So we have to collect the data, we have to analyze the data, and then we have to do something with the data among all stakeholders. So that was great to hear, that you have this new approach now to be open with your data. Dr. Popravko, you have lots of experience in the implementation of large-scale industrial projects. And you have seen in your working life how important it is to get the job done when your previous company was dealing with hydrocarbon projects. Yeah. Now, what do you suggest academia, the industry, and regulators should do in order to be carbon-minded, carbon-neutral? What do you suggest?
All right. May I have the remote control? And because to begin answering your question, I would like to share with you some slides which I want to illustrate my answer, because there are some numbers which I'd like you to watch, because whenever you say, it doesn't really strike your mind, but I would like to introduce some numbers, specific numbers, which probably make more sense of what I'm going to say. This is mine, yeah, because I'm watching this.
We are not synchronized.
Right, okay. So, yes, when the guy said, Exxon guy said, era of easy oil over, so many oil companies, major oil companies, rushed to explore possibilities to develop oil and gas from offshore or from Arctic or subarctic regions which were not previously explored, right? So, and without collective efforts, without academia, without governments, regulatory bodies, those projects could have never been achieved because new technologies required, all right, and collaboration between different stakeholders, participants required, harmonization approach, and oil majors managed to do it very well. I mean, I was impressed how Exxon brought up scientific research institutes to, you know, to assist them to understand ice physics, ice movements, in order to develop offshore projects in Arctic and subarctic areas. All right. However, that was about oil and gas extraction. Now we're talking about how we're going to get rid of oil and gas in foreseeable future. So again, I could not resist the urge and borrowed this diagram from you, because you highlighted the gap between energy demand for the fossil fuels and alternative energy sources. So that was probably a bit of outdated. Dr. Stopford based that graph on the BP scenarios, various scenarios. So more recent or more updated information coming up from the US Energy Information Administration, and you see that renewables catching up with the fossil fuels, but still we heavily rely on the liquid fuels which derive from the crude oil. And again, natural gas and coal still on the growth, I mean, consumption of these, again, fossil fuels, all right? So that resulting in growing emission, and it's been discussed many times, I mean, a lot at this conference, that mostly from the developing world coming up this demand for the energy and accordingly CO2 emission growth. Although the developed world still at plateau, I mean, still emitting a lot in spite of all the efforts. I would like you have a look at how our industry contribute to this. You see that more cargoes are going to be moved, and longer voyage holes producing. So in spite of all our efforts, still shipping going to contribute to the emissions. And you see that after all these drastic measures introduced by, all the measures introduced by IMO were introduced, you see that emission from the shipping industry reduced. But now we sort of at kind of plateau. Although the number of ships grows, but we still, you see that there is no significant breakthrough in our industry to cut the emission. So this is what, to answer your question, or address your question, we need a holistic approach, requires significant scientific input. The current situation reminds me what happened to our industry 200 years ago, when the steam was introduced to the shipping to replace sails. It was dramatic technological change, and from the middle of the 19th century, sails became obsolete, and the steam and steel ships replaced tall ships, where, I mean, the crew managers of these tall ships with sails reached their peak, their plateau. So without significant scientific input in changing, introducing new technologies, that change, that shift from the sails to steam was not possible. And therefore, we need, in spite of all what was told here, introducing smart technologies and impressive BSM input in developing this condition-based maintenance, which contribute to the widely spoken circular economy. I think until we still rely on our ships would rely on the internal combustion engines, burning fuel, extracting, for this chemical reaction happening in the engines, we still consume oxygen and polluting CO2. These efforts would not change much unless we collaborate activities and provide really holistic scientific research. And you see, the global bankers already wrote for us, issued for us a bill. So specifically for shipping industry, to build new ships, 400 billion would be required. But most significant is the bill for introduction and developing new kind of fuels. That means up to $1.8 trillion. If we take global GDP like $105 trillion, that number equal probably GDP of country like Brazil or Australia. So alone, our industry cannot afford facilitate this transition, and significant input required from the scientific, from the science, from academics, from regulatory institutions, bodies. Because look, we now have introduced European trading, emission trading system. And now IMO was dragging behind, lacking leadership in this area. And now we see IMO these days, on Monday, we received news that IMO wants to introduce a new fee, a new toll or levy on shipping to accumulate $80 billion to develop new technologies. But look at this, the bill is much bigger. 80 billion just to develop new technology is not sufficient. You need more money. And now in Lloyd's List, new publication, Americans, they want to introduce their own emission trading system and, to be put on shipping. So, we may end up in too much paperwork trying to comply with so many regulatories, but if you fail to address this properly and have proper leadership, proper approach, perhaps we may not achieve the goals. So leadership, holistic approach required to achieve the goals.
Yeah, thank you, Sergey. We have 5 more minutes for questions. Do we have some burning questions? Yes, please,
Thank you. This is Dr. Iliana Christodoulou-Varotsi. Very pleased to listen to your contributions. Let me just make the following point. It is important to put the topic into perspective from the stance that we have one entity participating in the standard setting process, which is the IMO, that is member states of the IMO. And in parallel, we have different actors acting as the authorities in charge of enforcement. So it is important to understand this dichotomy as to who is the decision maker and who is in actual fact in charge of enforcement, that is the penalties, implementation, checking if everything we have legislated is being implemented properly. And also, returning to the point I made before, putting the topic into perspective, we need to always remember that this scheme, emissions trading scheme, is traditionally contrasted to prescriptive approaches. You have a prescriptive approach when you say, as a legislator, you have to do this, or you must refrain from doing that. In this case, we introduce market elements into prescriptions. I just wanted to make these 2 points as an additional contribution to your wonderful
Thank you.
inputs.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
That is, of course, very correct what you said. The regulator can only regulate what the regulator was being asked to regulate. And who tells the regulator what needs to be regulated? It's the society, it's us. Yeah? And if we in the society understand what really the job is necessary to be done, maybe different regulation will come. I mean, I am very much in favor of regulation, but I'm in a dilemma to accept that we shall be regulated by the implementation of the impossible, and it is widely known now by scientific research institutes, for instance, like Norske Veritas, that the IMO tied target of 2030 with the alternative fuels is not achievable. The fuel will not be available. And everybody is talking about this a little bit like this. So the regulation is there, but the reality is that it will not be achieved. So isn't it better that now the society comes forward and says to its politicians, to its flag administration, guys, do the reasonable, do the sensible consideration. Because talking now about something and then not achieving it will not help our global warming. We may only lose time. So my conclusion to this is, yes, we regulate and we understand and we appreciate, but we have a social responsibility in our companies. We should make use of it. We should think about ESG not just as a tool to comply in order to use marketing strategies. No, we should use it by the sense of the 3 letters: environment, social, governance. And on that note, I have to hand back to the chairman, otherwise he gives us penalties. Sorry, Ari, sorry. You take the penalty. He is a guilty one now.
Yeah, I take the penalty back to the government, so the government funded. No burning question. I was just wanted to elaborate that this was a fantastic comments by the colleague here.
Yes.
And it's exactly what you said. I want to combine the 2 subjects. Yes, we have to admit and take the responsibility of the regulator and the stakeholder at the same time as a maritime administration. And it's correct, Eugen, what you said. We go into the meetings, we go to Brussels, we make the regulations, we come back, and then we have to enforce. We regulate and we have to enforce. But you all know the saying, we have to apply the carrot and stick mentality. You cannot have either one or the other just by itself. So when we regulate sensibly and have it make absolute sense. It's like we do with our kids. No matter how strict you are, how many punishment or enforcement or monitoring you do, you have to be just and right. Same goes with us. And it's an escalated event from regulators, the big brothers, so we call them, the meetings, European Maritime Agency, Commission, in EMSA, we come back, we bring it home, we take it off with you, all the way down to, and I'm really happy to see here university students today, which is a great development, a very positive vibe for us. So we have to do it exactly as that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry for the delay.
Thank you. Any last closing
Can
minute
I add
from-
something,
Yes.
Captain? Yes. Well, I'm not a maritime law specialist, but I know the IMO is a regulating body, but it cannot give penalties and it cannot put somebody in jail. This is up to the flag states and the port states to enforce the regulations. And this is where the problem starts, because not all states have the same capacity to enforce and regulate. And you know, there's also the term flag of convenience and all these other aspects to consider. I would like to comment on IMO. It's been very efficient in some aspects, yes, like SOx and NOx and oil pollution, and I'm sure for carbon they will accomplish an achievement. But I noticed that IMO is always behind, like EU first enforces the regulations, US, and then IMO follows, once the majority of ships already complied. So this is a problem I see with IMO, that they're not ahead of the regulations, they're always a step behind, waiting for the shipping industry to adapt, and then enforcing a regulation. So, yeah.
190 more countries have to come together in the IMO and do the... I think we shall really congratulate the IMO for what they're doing. They're doing a miracle. I mean, I like the comment you had with the family, and we all know what issues we have within the family. Now imagine you have to solve an issue for 197 families. And thank you.
Just a last comment from the viewpoint of a vessel operator. IMO, EU, whatever the regulators are, they have announced a lot of regulation, but they don't give us any solution. I mean, we need to find ourselves to alternative fuels, to make research and development, alternative emission reduction technologies, to do all the things, and they just say, reduce the emission by 30%, but they don't provide any assistance at all.
I think this mostly has to do, if I may add, with not trying to regulate the market, to leave it as a free market, and then you can decide on the different fuel types and technologies. But I agree there is radio silence on that aspect.
Yes, freedom is nice, but you cannot ask alternative low-carbon fuels if they are not available in the market. The same was a few years ago with sulfur cap. There was not available. So how can you reduce sulfur in our fuels if there is not available in the refineries? Only at the last moment they develop the new product. I mean, we are not refiners, we are not technology providers, we are just vessel operators.
Yeah, and it is, as a vessel operator now, the time with the other stakeholders to engage in an active dialogue with the local administration, to come together, to work reasonable and tangible, and at the end of the day also educate the seafarers early enough to handle the new fuels. All these things have to start now. The academia has to come on board.
You mentioned now, the seafarers, they do not have the expertise in these alternative fuels, in fuel cells, in hydrogen. They know nothing. They cannot handle these technologies.
That's right. So that's why we have to get up to speed now and collaborate. And I'm hopeful that from this panel, you all have understood that it is not just one product which will cure. Many products have to come now, and lots of research and development has to be done to get the job right. So thank you for that, and I apologize to the guys who come later.